Amy Johnson to the room. Hello, Amy. Where is she?
Hey there.
There you are. I'm sorry for the difficulty this morning.
That's okay. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so great to have you. We were just having a little conversation about some of the things that we see, and I love to host the community to share whatever they're doing in the ways of their work or the principles. And so we are more than ready to have a beautiful conversation with you.
Great. Yeah, I look forward to it.
So the room is full of lovely experiences as far as understanding goes. So you're speaking to people who are new to the principles, people who are just coming in to this room specifically for the first time, and for people who've known you for a while and known what you do and what you offer, and then some that are unfamiliar. So I would just love for you to share a little bit about, how you got started and who you are. And I've been following for a while, so I have some familiarity, but without reading a bio and taking it word for word, I just find sometimes it comes so organically from the speaker. So, welcome, Dr. Amy Johnson, to the room, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm a coach. I'm trained as a psychologist, and I came across this understanding um, I don't even know anymore, maybe 11 or 12 years ago. Um, in part because I knew with absolute certainty that I could do much better by the people I was working with. Like I was working with people as a coach and it was helpful to some degree. And yet I always knew, really, really knew like it's got to be simpler than this. And uh, there's more we can point toward that really gets to the root of things rather than sort of what I was doing was kind of playing around in people's psychology, helping them try to see things a different way, have a different mindset, have a different feeling. It was all kind of mucking around in all that psychology. And again, it wasn't that it wasn't helpful at times, it was helpful at times, but it definitely did not have the kind of deep, like right to the core of things, feel that I was always looking for. So I was always looking for how can I serve the people I serve better. And at the time that I came across this, I was also really needing something myself. So I had struggled with anxiety off and on for most of my life, and my anxiety was not an issue at that time, or so I thought. But really, what had happened is it sort of took on a different format. Rather than panic attacks and worry and the anxiety symptoms I had been used to, I became kind of obsessed with food and counting and weighing and exercise and all kinds of things that never had anything to do with food, never had anything to do with weight for me, and they don't for anyone really. Um, but that's sort of the costume they took on, and I see now that that was just anxiety showing up in a different costume. But I was really caught up in this habit around, again, binge eating and then starving and then over exercising and just paying so much attention to the whole thing that it was driving me crazy. And again, every sort of tool and technique I knew to use that I would help a client with these issues was falling short with me. And every time I tried something new, and it fell short, which was every time I tried anything. It would be helpful for a short period of time. I'd get really hopeful. I'd put the steps into place and make it work for a period of time. And then inevitably, something would happen and it wouldn't go perfectly. And I would decide, oh, clearly I'm beyond help. Here's one more thing that didn't work. So every time that happened, I just felt more and more hopeless and more broken. Um, and so I desperately was looking for something for myself too. And when I came across this understanding, it changed everything. I mean, my eating disorder was even though the behaviors were kind of there for a period of time afterward, I knew when I came across this within, I don't even know how long, but it was quick. I knew that I would not be caught up in that habit forever. I just knew I was free. I knew there was a way out. I knew that I was healthy by nature. And again, even though my habitual behaviors would kind of linger and sometimes I would even act on them, there was no fear around it. There was no more um, trying to change it. There was no more willpower and discipline around it. I just saw, okay, my brain's just still giving me the habitual stuff, but I saw it with such different eyes that I knew I was not caught. I knew that this habit had no power over me and it would not be a thing that would last forever. And I didn't know that at all prior to this. So that was huge. And then all kinds of other things started changing and lightening up as they do. All kinds of things I couldn't have cared less about, to be honest with you. My whole universe was about uh, getting myself free of this issue and then my work and helping people as best I could. And so all kinds of things like in my relationships and just in how I see myself, like all kinds of things on the periphery that I didn't even recognize were sticking points. I didn't even know I had a lot of thinking around those, started to change and clear up, and relationships got better and so much else in my life got better. And I love that this works that way. So that's when I was really like, okay, there's something going on, because I'm definitely not making all this happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What we were in a conversation with you last week, and or was it, yeah, last week, and you were sharing, all of these experiences that students had around um, people's struggles, where people struggle, and the question is that I came to this myself looking for something different. A lot of people come in that place of seeking, but what about for those that are just listening for something new? You know,
Yeah, well, they're the lucky ones. I don't think it matters, to be honest. I mean, yeah, you're right, though. There's a lot of people, most people are struggling, looking for something better, looking to better some feeling or some situation in their lives. And then there's always, a handful that just are like, hey, what else is out there? What's available? I just want to see something new. And I kind of jokingly say they're the lucky ones only because a lot of times when we aren't desperate for change, like I was, and like many of us are, we just tend to have less on our minds. And sometimes we see things much easier. But even as I say that, there's a million exceptions to that. So I've seen people, completely hopeless, suicidal, like at the end of their rope, desperate for change. And they see things too. So I think in the end, the fact that what we're pointing toward is I would say it's true. Again, you feel for yourself what feels true to you, but I think it is so essential. It resonates. We always use that word, it resonates. It resonates because we know this already. We've lived our lives from this understanding. It's just a description of how life works. And even though we can't necessarily articulate it and talk about it, and we might not intellectually understand it all, we deeply get it. I mean, it's as essential and simple as your parents saying, oh, go sleep on it, go have a timeout and you'll feel better later. Like, no one ever explained to us why that works, but we all sort of know it does. You feel really crabby, you go take a nap or you go have a good cry, and then you feel better. What's that about? That's what we're talking about. All kinds of, there's just so many everyday kind of just ways that we're living this, and we're living it as if we know it already, because we do on some level. So yeah, I think any way we come to it is amazing. And anytime we're just in the vicinity of this kind of conversation, we're extremely likely to be impacted in some way.
hmm hmm I think the my thoughts go to the feeling. That feeling of when we're in our seeking mode, looking for something because there's something in our minds that feels broken, although we know we're not broken.
Yeah.
We get that feeling when we've seen this and it's been brought to our attention. And a lot of people have said they come back for the feeling. And I'm curious where your insights and your feelings began. Like you said, you know, you saw it, and where did you see the where did you see the feeling, or maybe explain some of the feeling too?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, I mean, sometimes it's hard to remember for me, but because in the 11 or 12 years since I've initially come across this, and that was just the beginning, by the way. I mean, I had insights last week that were as big as the ones I had 12 years ago, and that's pretty amazing. That's again like the incredible gift that is this understanding, because it is who we are, that anytime our thinking clears out of the way, anytime we are not front and center on our own minds, we see new things. Now, we have to be careful about our expectations about what an insight looks like, and even about the feeling. It's not always going to be, you know, you spend 2 weeks floating on air. Like, we have to get really dumb, I think. I always say that, and I know it's a little, some people don't like that phrase, but the dumber we are, the better we are, because we get so many stories and ideas and theories we make up about what it should look like and what's happening for other people. And well, my last insight felt this way and this one feels that way. And, you know, it's valuable to look at that, to talk about, but also kind of know, like, who cares? Like, you know, I mean, it's going to feel and look however it feels and looks. And the less thinking we have about that, the easier it is for us. So anyway, so yes, I think it's such an amazing gift that every time we just get quiet and our thinking clears, we see more, because it not from seeking out there, because it comes from within us. And it's almost like I describe it a lot, like it's having a crack in the foundation. Once that crack is formed, it's going to keep spreading. Any pressure, any attention, not like, it's just going to keep on spreading naturally. And so that's what I think often happens. You guys have all had that initial crack, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be interested in this, you know? So now it's great that you stay in the conversation. Amazing. But also know that when you're off living your life, not in the conversation, that crack is still spreading, and it will for the rest of your life. And I can't imagine anything better than that. Like, how lucky are we? It's incredible. So the feeling, when I think about recognizing I'm thinking about it in a biased way from a long time ago, and a lot has happened since then, what I do remember initially is from my place of being so caught up in what's wrong with me and why am I doing it wrong and what should I be doing instead. Doing, me. Those were the two key words all over the place. Me, a whole lot of me, way more than I wanted to deal with, and a whole lot of doing, and right and wrong, and what do I do, and how do I do this. And some of the earliest things I heard that were so helpful for me in this kind of conversation is, no one said it this way, but this is sort of what I took from it, what I heard, is that it's not really about us, you know, that our experience is not personal, and it's this universal energy that moves through us, and it creates whatever it creates, and then it changes and moves on. And there was such a peace in that, to see that I didn't have to stop my experience and do anything with it. It wasn't my experience to begin with. It was just experience. I don't have to, you know, what are we going to do with it? It's like trying to stop the weather pattern that's moving over your town right now and doing something with it because you don't like it. It is literally that crazy. Yet we're doing it all the time. We're taking it personally. We're saying, why Why does it have to be so rainy on my town? What's wrong with me that it rains here all the time, or that it's so foggy, or that it's so dark in the winter? As if the weather has anything to do with us. That's what we're doing with our internal weather. Why do I feel this way? Why am I so caught up? What can I do to fix it? And something in that really clicked with me early on. And in particular, because I was caught up in this eating disorder, um, I heard it first in brain terms, not even around the principles so much, but I first heard something around the fact that my brain repeats these habitual patterns because I innocently keep paying attention to them and thinking that they mean something. Every time my brain would say, and it did this all the time, like, go eat, or okay, now don't eat for 3 days, or it would just bark out these commands and demands at me all the time. I took it seriously. I thought that it was my brain, right? I thought, hey, I need to do this. And it came with such tension and discomfort that I thought, okay, if I don't listen to this feeling's only going to get worse. So I was just run around by my brain, as we are when we're really caught up in habits and addiction. I was just anything my brain told me, hey, don't eat, you'll feel better. Hey, eat a ton, you'll feel better. I just bought it. I just believed it and did what it told me to, because I never really had that opportunity to step back and see that it was just the weather, that it was just the brain barking out commands, that I was not it. So when I first kind of began to see, oh, it's just a machine. It's just a brain telling you what you've innocently trained it to tell you because you act on it all the time. I conditioned my brain to do exactly what it was doing. When I started to glimpse, wait a minute, maybe this has no power over me. Maybe this is all an innocent misunderstanding. My brain's telling me all this stuff because it's looking out for me, but it's wrong. I mean, the feeling with that was just, it was incredible because the weight of this habit with all the shame and again, what are you going to do and what's wrong with you? That went away. It just looked like I was dealing with an alarm clock, like an alarm clock that, I have to get up at 6 for work and I innocently set my alarm clock for 7. Well, that's easy. You just see, oh, there's a misunderstanding here and you fix it. Or, in our case, we don't have to fix it, but that's how it felt to me. It's like, oh, well, my brain's just telling me what I innocently kind of conditioned it to do. None of this has all this power. And it was huge, huge. And then coming in, so that was a little outside of the principles, but then it's not really outside of it. Then coming into this sort of conversation and getting a feel for what's there beyond the computer, what's there beyond that brain machine, that just blew everything wide open too. And the feeling was, I don't know, I mean, just so much freedom and so much relief, and just seeing that it wasn't all about me, that this was universal and it was always true and there were no exceptions. Just huge piece in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. I'm going to ask the group if anybody'd like to share on that, or do you have anything to say at all? Or shall we just let Amy carry on? So it's a I experience what you're saying as letting go of the intellectual understanding of the way I think it needs to be based on a habitual pattern. Like you said, your mind just talking to you and you just following the rules as your mind speaks, and thinking that, well, because it's your mind, it's obviously in the right place. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And seeing that, I think there's that place between my intellect saying, well, it's got to be right. It's got to be right. It's, this is what I know. This is what my past has taught me. This is the experience I'm in currently. But there's that space between, what we think we know and the insights that are in what the unknown
Yeah.
and what's in there.
And when what's got to be right is hurting us, which it is, or we wouldn't even be paying attention to it. We take all kinds of thinking as truth, and that's fine. If it's not hurt, like we don't have time. I think that's super adaptive that we take most of our thinking as the truth, because we don't have the capacity to stop and evaluate everything, and we don't need to. We're lived by something bigger than our intellect. So when our intellect is in there, yes, saying like, or we're in there kind of viewing it saying, well, it must be right. It's coming, it's in my head, it feels like the truth. It sounds like me. It must be the way it is. And yet we're in a habit or addiction, or we're suffering, or we feel stuck. Those feelings are there to just show us, hey, you're not seeing the big picture.
Mm-hmm. I had a thought come up there about some of the feelings that, you know, that our intellect knows aren't necessarily conducive to a good place, but things like shame, things like, not feeling in a place where the mind can share this or talk about this, because I too had an eating disorder. I was a bulimic for many years, many more years than I would have liked to have been, and I had many years of stillness in it. And I think in my case, it was more, I didn't have the principles at the time, and it was more control. I thought, I'm stronger than this, I can do this, and I would be controlling it and using my intellectual mind to override the addiction in itself.
Yeah.
And when I came to the principles, my understanding was that I could see so much more. Like you said, as you step back from it.
Yeah.
And realize that there's this method, this way of our body works, our mind works, that we're actually not in control of, in the sense of that we've been living it our whole lives. It's been part of us, whether we've seen it or not. So when I came to see that, there was a freedom in that place that I'd never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I do know that, shame and the experiences of feelings that, how do I tell someone I've done this? Or how do I say to someone, how do I even begin to get to you, Amy, if I have these feelings of wanting to change the way my thinking is and be a part of a community that is thinking in a different way and seeing something that creates more lightness and healing and positivity? How do I even get to you? Because there's some feelings that hold people back from their mental wellness, even if they see it. And what would you say to the experience of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for as long as any of us suffers, we're in that place where thought is in the way, because obviously we aren't suffering. We are full of health. We're never missing or missing anything. So always, for as long as you suffered, for as long as I suffer, for as long as anybody suffers with anything they're suffering from, that's exactly what's going on. Is there's some thinking in the way that looks real, and thankfully, our design tends to be much stronger than that thinking. So at some point, now this is just a generalization, but at some point, what happens for many people is we've just suffered enough. We can hold ourselves back for quite a lot of years sometimes, but sometimes we just like, no, there has to be a new way. And that thinking softens a bit for us to actually open our mind and our heart to a new way.
Mm-hmm.
That's always possible. But yes, our psychology can be very strong, but I think often, yes, we've just had enough, and that softens it a bit, and we have a little bit of surrender. And then again, because we're made of health, that health just comes rushing to the surface, and it doesn't take much for us to see it. Sometimes we are really clinging to how we think things are supposed to go and who we think we are and how this habit's going to go away. Yet we immerse in this, or we hear something that just pierces through it enough to help us like loosen our grip on it a tiny bit. And so it's awesome to see, though, that our design is way stronger than our resistance, which doesn't mean we can't be stuck. We can't be in the resistance for a long time. We can, but our design is stronger.
Absolutely. The design. Yeah. Designing the mind in a place where it opens for opportunity. It has a place to grow and see. Um, I was reminded of that place where when I was in the beginning learning around, being at nighttime in the fog in your car, and you can only see just that one little bit, but we can make it the whole way
Yeah.
because we only need to see what's in front of us moment to moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and how do we know to keep going? Like we know how headlights work, right? So we know, and how traveling works. So we know, okay, I can't see the whole way, but I'm going to keep driving and just go as far as I can see to go, and I'll likely end up somewhere. So for us, like in exploring all this, I think one of the biggest things we can just be curious about until it feels true to you is like, what if peace and well-being and ease and health and love are our nature? If they are, that means that they are always like at the tip of the headlights. Like they're the ones sort of moving us forward. So yes, you might not be feeling them at all. You may not have felt like you felt them in a very long time. But if we let those, if we assume they're our nature, or just play with this, if this isn't comfortable for you yet, what if they are? Then it's like that's what moves us forward little by little, even when we can't see the end, even when we can't even imagine being free of our issues or being happy or any of that. We just get to follow the feeling of that. And you do begin to see, hey, I'm getting somewhere.
Hmm. And I just want to say, there's so many in the room that are not suffering from addiction. And yes, Amy and I have, and we've had that experience. Yet, the place that where the mind has that has taken us out. Where yes, we don't see the road in front of us, but we do have that innate capacity to see, even just what's just ahead of us in the lights, and also that place where it might not be addiction for you. It might be something else. It might be just looking for a peaceful, easy feeling, or to get out of the stream of that constant, mind movement, that squirrel, that monkey mind of whatever, is going on, especially during COVID. And, maybe Amy, you could talk to the folks about the place where, that overthinking mind, even without the extremity of falling into addiction, but that place where people aren't at peace, that the mind is continuously moving. When am I going to get my next job? When's COVID going to be over? When can I travel? When can I work? When can I get away from my husband? When can I, when can I be
Yeah.
separate from my kids in my own home? And like those places.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so big to see that all of that's at the root of everything for all of us, right? Like I like how you said that. Like sometimes we'll what will occur to us with all that busy thinking that feels so personal and that we are very caught up in. Usually we're only caught up in it because it looks important and meaningful. So when we start to see, oh, there's just a mind that spins, that jumps around and talks about all kinds of things, but that's not our source of wisdom. Like that doesn't guide us through life. It's just a machine that narrates everything. We're guided through life by life from something much deeper. So anyway, when we kind of start to feel that out, we naturally start to tune in far less to all that busy thinking. But when before that happens, when we are very tuned into all the busy thinking and it feels so heavy and personal, that happens to every single human ever, all the time. And sometimes it'll occur to us in all that heaviness to do something to feel closer to home. And that's where the habits and other things come in. So that's where every issue, every problem we get into is essentially the exact same thing. For some people, they'll just go work harder when that feeling comes on, or they'll go have an affair, or they'll go pick up an eating disorder, or drinking, or shopping, or hoarding, or whatever. But I think that's really big to see that it's always about what Kelly said, like this busy mind that looks and feels like us. What comes after is just our best attempt to quiet it and feel and get back to home, you know? So that's where what comes after, whatever it is we add to try to feel like ourselves again, which is totally backward, isn't really the issue. You can flip a coin, it could be anything. And of course, everything in our society and everything in our world is focused on that thing we do. Oh no, if you have a drinking problem, this is your class. If you have an eating problem or a shopping problem or a work problem, this is your, and it's crazy because it just touches this totally superficial, irrelevant kind of tip of the iceberg, and it totally ignores what's beneath it all, which is all of our, I want to say addiction thinking, but our misunderstanding of thought, our misidentification with thought and who we really are. So when our mind is just talking like crazy and jumping around all the topics, it doesn't matter what the conversation's about. It's so amazing to keep it super simple and to just let us see, wow, I'm either in a really busy mind, very caught up, or I'm not. And of course, that's too simple. We're always somewhere in between, and we're always moving. Our mind's talking and then it's quieting, and then it's talking and then it's quieting all day long, every day of our lives until we die. but what I love about this really simple way is it keeps us out of the content and the stories and all that stuff that just feels so real and sticky and personal, but truly, I mean, we've all noticed, right? Our mind can be on some topic and it's so important and it's all about us. And then the next day it completely changes its tune and it has a different opinion about the exact same topic, like my mind loves to just talk about my mom and like how she should be different. And man, it will not when she's there, but when I'm just laying in bed, when I'm in the shower, like it has all kinds of conversations about how my mom should be different. And then what happens? It happened this weekend. She comes over and she's right there in the flesh in front of me, and my mind has nothing to say. It's like, oh, she's so nice. Why do I like complain about her in my head all the time? Like our mind, it just contradicts itself and it talks in circles and it's incredibly repetitive, which should be a good clue that it's not giving us any information we actually need. It just repeats itself because it's a machine. It's just a computer trying to predict the future so that we can feel safe. It's trying to keep us alive. That's its main function, right? So it tries to guess what's going to happen, and it comes up with theories and it connects dots and it tells stories, all in order to keep us physically alive. And that's wonderful as long as we don't believe it so much. As long as we know, hey, it's sacrificing accuracy for the sake of trying to predict stuff. When we kind of know that that's what's going on, it's amazing, because then we have a brain that does what it does, a mind that talks, but we're less inclined to believe it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Sam, go ahead. Love to have you chat.
I'll put my hand down here. Oh goodness. I'm disappearing here. There we go. So what kind of came up for me with that is, what about someone that's had a diagnosis of uncurable or untreatable depression and anxiety?
So like what's your question? Like is it untreatable? Is it uncurable? Or what? I'm curious.
I don't think it is. I think it's a bullshit label.
Yeah.
That someone has found to just go, there you go. Now you don't need to continue on in life anymore because you have this label. And I don't really know if I have a question. It's just, I find it interesting that there are these potential labels. Like you said, it's like, oh, if you have an eating disorder, here's your group over here. If you have a drinking problem, here's your group over here. Oh, you have depression and anxiety, here's your group over here. And then you just kind of sit there because you have a label. And it seems like some people, when they have that, it's like, well, see, that's what it is. But then
Yeah.
nothing continues any further. And I just think it's it's just really difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
So I don't really know if I have a question. I guess it's just interesting that it sits there like that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't fathom how anyone could know that something is untreatable or uncurable, first of all. Like all they have to base that on is what hasn't worked in the past, maybe. But how could we, you know what I mean? Like how could any doctor or any professional know that someone what someone is dealing with is not going to change in the future? Like
Well,
they don't know
it's like
that.
someone
So
saying, well, guess what? You get to be stuck there for the rest of your life.
yeah. Yeah, and I think it comes from as damaging as it is, as harmful as it is, sometimes. I think it comes from the current paradigm. It comes from them seeing the best they can see to do. Like all of these things have been treated as if they're illnesses, which is completely backward and ridiculous. And it's a giant lie. But the people saying it don't know that it's a giant lie. It's how they've been trained, you know. So when we're out looking for like what's an illness, which illness do you have? And then we're like, oh, you have the illness of depression. And we've tried these 10 therapies and they've never worked for you. Now you have the illness of untreatable depression, which makes sense from that paradigm, but the paradigm's wrong. The paradigm is completely messed up, backward, wrong, you know? So yeah,
I
that's
love that analogy of the weather. It's like, it's the same thing. Okay, you might be stuck in this situation of, or whatever, of depression and anxiety at this moment, but what's to say that something tomorrow comes and completely changes that,
yes.
or a
Yeah.
week or 10 days or a month or whatever. And
Yeah.
now that you're stuck in this little box, it's like, oh, like I can't look at anything else because that's what it is. And it's like you're potentially missing, not the answer. I mean, maybe it is the answer. I don't know.
Yeah.
The change.
Yeah, it's tough because our mind sees what it believes and it finds evidence for what it believes, you know, but you're right. Like where we can see that there's no way, there's no possible way anyone can actually have incurable depression is that depression is a feeling at the level of our psychology. It's just experience, right? Now, we do have a lot of habitual experience. We have a lot of habitual thoughts and feelings, and then we kind of think they're ours, kind of like what you're saying, like, oh, yep, this is how I always feel. These are mine. We do all that misunderstanding ownership thing of our feelings. But most people kind of just stop there, like, oh, well, it's what I feel, it's my psychology, I guess that's me. And where we get to see here is no, that's like the teeny tiny tip of the iceberg is what you think and feel, and it's not even that important because it's always changing. Like why would we hook ourselves to that? Why would we chain ourselves to experience or weather, right? That's always changing. What we get to see is no, there's a healthy essence behind any psychology that shows up. When you know there's a healthy essence, you just tend to look far less at what's happens to be moving through the thoughts or feelings that happen to be there. And yeah, and then we get to see this paradigm like, oh no, like anything, like you exactly like you said, Sam, anything can show up at any time because it is what we're made of. We're made of that health.
Yeah, I had to write that down. It's like that feeling of the depression and anxiety, it's like you're stuck in that moment or of that thinking.
Yeah.
And when you get stuck there, you can't see anything else that comes your way.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're feeling depressed, it's like you don't want to seek anything that's going to help you feel better or happy. And there's so many things around you that can.
Yeah.
Why not focus on that potential better thing than being stuck in the crap of and the negativity and feeling just blah.
Yeah.
It's like that stuckness, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
I want to say, Sam, that stuckness is just a thought as well. It's just a thought. You know, I always call it the pancake effect. You know, you have one thought, and if we believe it, then another one comes by and it may look the same, and then we put that one on top. And then another one might come by looking a little similar too, and we put that one on top. And then we believe the the thoughts that have lined themselves up as, you know, the pancake stuckness. Yet if we go back to our original wisdom, that place
Yep.
within us where, you know, there is wholeness and beauty and wisdom and understanding, and we see that, then it's amazing how what we're starting to see in thinking changes. Because a label is only a label if we believe it to be so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I add to the conversation here?
Sure, Karen, welcome.
Thank you. So in terms of Sam, and I agree with Kelly and Dr. Amy and Sam, I think the point of going around and around in terms of the depression, and there's two things in some ways. The depression can be a result of, so it can be quite individual in that somebody could have an injury that damages some of the hormonal glandular things that are causing that person to feel depressed. But my experience of it is that for years and years of being in that empathetic state and in overwhelm of helping others, as well as feeling helpless, I was losing touch with the sense of pleasure. So it becomes the habituated thinking, and that habituated thinking of being in overwhelm and empathetic and helping others produces chemicals. And then I soon lost track of what it was to have a sense of pleasure or enjoyment, because I was in that constant, I need to help someone, I need to help someone, I need to help someone. And I, again, lost track of what my own needs were of helping myself or feeling pleasure. And I think when we lose track of feeling pleasure, we then become in that depressed state. So because as you were saying, Sam, you know, you look around, you go, well, why don't I feel happy about that? Or why don't I feel pleasure about that? I think we've just habituated our brain to the other, and we now have to repattern, as Kelly was saying, the ability to feel the pleasure by experiencing something that gives us pleasure, and really nurturing that to the other extent of it. But so there's the habituated pattern of leading yourself into that depressed state, or there is the physical component of having an injury that can also not allow you to feel that sense of pleasure and put you in a depressed state. So, you know, basically that's my thought about that. Thanks for bringing up that, Sam, the question. I think it's
Yeah, thank you. It was kind of a question that I had. It's related to my ex-husband with having that label, and I can see how the pattern of no joy has that stuckness. However, I feel like we can get to a place where we can choose at some point. It's changing that thinking. So yeah, I definitely think there's more to it. There's just a frustration that comes along with it to have that label now, which I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that do get labeled with specific things. It's like, it almost like Kelly says, that pancake thing. Oh, guess what? Now the lid came and there it is. I think it's harder to take a lid off than to maybe, you know, the different layers of the pancake. So thank you, Karen.
Amy, can you speak a little bit to the place where, so the place where the gravitation to thought being that the wise part of the self, the wisdom part of ourself, that space between where you were and where you are, and that large space that grew, as you said, like, you just kept,
Yeah.
you had the crack, and then it grew and it grew and it grew, because in there, what I heard was a new sense of self. You know, the bulimic was the label, but now there's this crack in the earth, and there's something growing in that.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to kind of this conversation with Sam and Karen that I think is really important to see, that what this understanding tends to do for people is that it doesn't really matter what we feel so much. You can feel depressed, you can feel no joy, you can have all kinds of neurochemicals, leading to certain feeling states. Not that we don't care about those or don't have preference, we all prefer to feel nice and to feel happy. But what grows in that space is a sense of, I don't know, I can only use the words that make sense to me, but a bigger awareness, a bigger consciousness, a bigger space where experience, psychological experience, moods and hormones and brain chemistry and all that stuff shows up, but it is not you. And you are far less entwined with it. Again, you aren't taking it personally. It doesn't look like, oh, here's my depression. It just looks like, oh, there's a feeling, there's a thought, there's a sensation, here's a mood. But when it isn't ours, when it doesn't look so personal and like something that we need to do something about, or we need it to be differently so we can feel better, then there is just ginormous space around it. So I don't know if that makes sense for people, but that is one of the hugest, absolutely most freeing things from this understanding that I've personally gained, and what I've seen thousands of people gain, is just not caring so much how you feel. I can have a really, really horrible day. I can feel depressed. I can feel anything. I know it's a feeling. I just know I don't need it to even go do anything. I don't need it to change. I know, just like I know how weather works, I know more and more that I am not that fleeting feeling, and that it's going to take care of itself. That's huge. That's where you quit getting all that layering effect, the pancake or whatever, like it just isn't happening so much. And this is how kids live, by the way. If you want to see examples of this, look at any child under the age of 3. They feel all kinds of stuff. They feel it, and then it moves on. They don't add the layers about what it means about them. They don't push it away. They're in that space, and there is room for everything to come up, come to life, and move right through them. I think that is huge. And when we live more in that space, that's how things like depression go away. That's how, because they're there, but they're like off in the periphery and we don't care about them. So that we aren't grabbing onto them and trying to change them. So it's like the health has so much more room to just come up and wash it away.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, but I just want to hit the people who've been waiting for questions. So if you want to raise your hand, that would be great, or I'll just get to you after. So Linda, I'm going to get to you first. Ray Joan, I believe you also had your hand up, and then Diane, we'll get to you third, okay? I just want to say one thing about that, Amy. That was lovely. And we do have, by the way, some time after 10 o'clock to do question and answer. We're going to be opening the floor to everybody. There was something that came up in that was really beautiful, and that was that space where I know what it was. It was Barbara Patterson who said it. Thank you, Barbara. She said, what would it look like to just leave yourself alone? So as the thoughts come up, they just come up.
Yeah.
And you just leave them alone.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just going to leave myself alone today. So let's take Linda, Ray Joan, and then Diane. And then Sharon. Thank you. Welcome, Linda.
Hi, Amy. It's a pleasure to meet you. Your book was the first book that I ever bought. moving into 3P principal land. So it's really nice to be here with everybody. So I was reflecting, I don't know if it's a question, but I would just love to hear what you have to say about this, is, so, okay, I'm gonna try to articulate this. So I too had an eating disorder, and for many, many years. And I was talking about that in another context, about that journey and how I had changed my relationship with myself and my body. And I started thinking about how did I do that? It's everything that you're talking about. This was pre-3 principal land, you know. And about how when thinking came up for me around food, because it was a wonderful distraction. I didn't have to think about anything else because all I thought about was what I was going to eat, when I was going to eat, how I was going to hide it all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now upon reflection, because now I've had a challenge with chronic pain in my body in the past as well, and it's back again. And so I've had lots of thinking about, why am I back here again? And I can't believe I'm here again, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I realized I had this insight of what was about, I'm trying to articulate this and not so well, was that the power is, why wouldn't I, is about, I was watching Ted Lasso, which is a great series, by the way, if you've never seen it. And one of the things that he said in it was that be a goldfish. Because goldfish only have the memory of 3 seconds. And when I think about it in that context, that if I'm, because when I think about that context, then I have it takes away all my thinking around why am I back here again? Mm-hmm. I can't believe I'm back here again. Oh, all of that it just resets me and puts me back into just right here, right now, and just showing up, sort of like you were saying, Kelly, about the, in the fog and only seeing 2 feet in front of me. Anyway, I just would love to hear what you have to say about.
Well, I love that. I mean, you see it clearly yourself. You kind of came back to that even as you said it, like, oh, the chronic pain, it's back. We could feel like, oh, there's her story about it's back and why. And it's one of my favorite coaching questions that I always ask people, like, what if you had amnesia? What if you woke up tomorrow and didn't remember who you were and how things go for you? You'd be in bliss. There's studies in this. There are people that have that 3-second memory and they greet every moment with just joy and bliss. So I don't wish that upon any of you, but we can have the best of both worlds. You can see, like you do, wow, look how my mind wants to bring everything back and tie a story into it. And that's just what a mind does. But you get to be a goldfish.
Yeah.
Even while your mind's doing that. See, that's the distinction we talked about a minute ago. We don't have to make our mind stop doing that. Your mind will never stop. It will always want to tell a coherent story about the past and the future that's all about you. But you can see that a mind does that, and then you get to live here in goldfish land.
Yeah, it was a beautiful insight.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Can't hear you.
Okay, so is it my turn?
You're muted, Kelly. We can't hear you.
Oh.
That might help. Go ahead, Rejoan.
So thank you, Amy. It's interesting listening to you and everything, and I can really relate to the part about depression and eating disorder. The only thing with I was feeling because I've had both, and when I was in depression, there was no thought of anything else. So, because when I was so deep into it, that there wasn't a thought of how can I be better at all for me. So I can't really understand how, I can see it now and then go back to it and go, oh yeah, that would have been helpful. But at the time, being deep into depression was like there was no way out or no other thought. And with my eating disorder, it was all about control in my life because I couldn't control anything else. But I could control what I ate or didn't eat. Mm-hmm. And that, that was that. But yeah, so it's but with the 3 principles now, it's fascinating. My thoughts are so different.
Yeah.
Like I recognize things now when they come up, or I go to a different place in it, and I recognize when a thought is coming up, and it's like, well, that's not serving me. I don't need that thought. It's not right. So when you talk about the brain, giving you messages and telling you things, and that's true. I really feel that now. I'm so grateful to know the 3 P's in my life now. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I mean, you're right. When we can't see what we can't see. So when we're in a deep depression, you're right. There is no thought there. But look, you're not in that deep depression now. So at some point, thought moved. And what you're seeing as you immerse in this, we sometimes refer to it as our grounding deepens, meaning I absolutely know for sure that I am health. Then, and you too, right? As you know that now, when you're in a little depressive thinking cloud, it's just going to occur to you. You still can't see what you can't see, but it's so much more likely to occur to you. Hey, this isn't me. This isn't natural. I know I'm health. So it's like those little pokes, those little holes get poked in there more and more quickly, just like you're seeing now. New thought shows up so much faster, and it all looks different.
It great. Does, yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Love that. Thank you. Amy, would you like to meet my mom, Diane?
Yes.
Go ahead, Diane.
Of course.
Hi, Amy.
I'm sure Kelly has none of the thinking about you that I have about my mom.
Well, I'm a proud mother of Kelly. I just wanted to talk to you for a few minutes on depression. Excuse me. My father was manic depressive, as they called it, from the time he was about 59. And my mother had, I would think, just mild depression, but sufficient that she was getting suicidal thoughts. And so, of course, they both had to be treated, right? My father took up most of her thinking pattern because when he went manic, and he would do erratic things, like he'd be up all night and day. We had a cottage about an hour away from where we lived at the time. It was on a half an acre of yards. He decided he wanted tropical flowers all around the place. So he spent loads of money as well. Now, I have 2 more months to live at 79. And then I'm going to turn the magic 80 in April, one day after Kelly's birthday. She's born on the 28th. I'm born on the 29th. And I have depression. I don't have it at the moment. I am being treated for it. But it also got to a point where I was having suicidal thoughts. And I just knew with my history that it wasn't anything in my environment that was causing it. It was within my genes. I was carrying something that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I went on antidepressants, and it helped me for a long time. But then I started to get a side effect, and that side effect was called dyskinesia. And so my lip here would flap all the time. And the doctor decided to take me off that drug. And we took it off very, 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 very slowly. But the time I had been off it about 3 weeks, the depression started to resurface itself. And again, I tried to do things naturally with it that time. And but it came to also suicidal thoughts. So I did have to go on to back onto something. And I'm fine. I have no problem now. I have no dyskinesia. I'm healthy. My head's healthy. My body's healthy. But I did have to use medication to do it. So just wanted to pass that information on to some of the people that were also talking about having depression, that sometimes it just gets to a point where it's unsafe to try and just keep your thoughts in a positive way when all you're doing is seeing how you're going to plan your suicide. So I just wanted to put that forward. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great point that there's never a right or wrong thing to do. Like your common sense and wisdom said, hey, I want to be on something. And that makes absolute perfect sense for you. That's fine, you know, and I think that's just so big to see that we have so much resilience and wisdom that leads us in the right direction. And that does not mean that we do or don't take anything, you know, like you'll work it out, and you have, and that's wonderful. It's sometimes just a note on like I don't know, I guess just about seeing thought. And especially sometimes I think it's almost easier in a way when it's a genetic sort of thing where, right, you have the predisposition biologically to have this kind of thinking and have these moods. And there's this space again that you, especially now when it's not so severe, when you're able to just see with normal moods, wow, look where my mind goes. That's just in my genes. That's not about me. It's not about my life. It's not about really wanting to die. It's just the story that plays out in my head. Now, as I say that again, I understand sometimes it's like a helmet and we cannot see around it and it looks absolutely like you. And other times we have this ability to have a little bit more space and perspective. So, you know, again, I'm not saying we can always see through that, but it's amazing to be looking in this direction and to sort of know, yeah, stuff's going to come up. And sometimes it's really scary, dark stuff, but it's stuff, technical term, it's stuff coming up, you know, and it's not me.
Can I ask one more question if I've got time?
Yes, Mom.
Yeah. I wonder whether you've worked with anybody with cognitive decline.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
That's something that's happening in my husband at the moment.
Yeah. And it's kind of like we were saying. I mean, I think this applies to any issue that we look at from within this understanding. Is it's like cognitive decline. Of course, it feels more personal. It has all kinds of effects, mood and otherwise, and people stop remembering things and all the implications. But our brain is a machine. It's not him. He's still there. It's not who he is. He might lose his temper more easily. He might forget things at times. He might forget people at times, but that's not him. He's still there. He's, you know, and I just think that's so comforting in this, because often what happens is it's harder for those of us around this person, mostly because of the understandable thinking we have of, oh no, he doesn't remember me, or he's changed. And, you know, we have to deal with that. Well, we all are going to lose, you know, the person we kind of thought we knew, their personality and all that stuff changes. But to say that that's not him, I think can be really helpful.
So is there something you can advise on how to approach some of those things? Because I'm in a situation right now where my husband wants to leave home in Coquitlam. I'm not sure where you are, but in Coquitlam, British Columbia, and drive 5 hours to go to our residence in Vernon, and the temperature there is 11 to 12 degrees below zero. And he wants to work outside.
Yeah.
How do I say that? You can't go, because if I say you can't go, no, there's a big flare up.
Well, yeah, I think in any kind of touchy situation like this, we all have the best chance we're going to have of being heard by someone when we kind of can connect to who and what they are. So you're right. You already know that. You asked it, it's in your, like, you're not going to boss them around because he's going to say, forget you, I'm out of here. Like you're going to try to get into a nice feeling, connect with the him beyond all this thinking, and then, do the best you can see to do, which is all any of us can ever do.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Keep your fingers crossed, but you're going to have a better chance, just like when Kelly was a teenager and she was doing crazy stuff, like you wanted to get in a good feeling with her, not just lecture her all the time. It's going to be the same thing here.
Yeah. Thank you. Pamela, please. Welcome.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Amy. And thanks to Diane too for that. There was two things I just wanted to kind of share some thoughts on, and what Diane illustrated for me, which has been part of my personal journey, is the mind-body connection and the expression of our genes, and knowing that, I discovered different mental illnesses in my family and in the past, and that we didn't know about. And I think when you don't know about it, then you really take it personally, and you don't have that understanding. So I just really want to honor Diane and the importance of sharing with our family some of these things that can help give context, because everything is a paradigm. It occurs in an era, trauma occurs because of things that are completely beyond our control. And then they manifest later, and you don't really know where it comes from. So, and just for Diane for illustrating that it's a process, and to get support for the process and know that there's eventually there's a way through. But I think the thing that really touched me that Amy talked about was not taking our experience personally, and that these are her words, a universal energy that is moving through us, and that we're guided by life, for something deeper. And that understanding has been a very big part of me on my personal mental health journey, and coming to terms with the loss of a child, and being able to see his life as the life that consciousness and universal energy moved through him, and the gifts that he left behind, and how it changed everybody, certainly in our family. And just being able to move from that place of not taking it personally, from feeling everything that life directed at me was, like, why me this, why me that, and the terrible discomfort and identity of, what appeared on the surface as a perfect world was completely shattered. And I feel I've been able to move through from the why me to the deep appreciation just for life on life's terms. And I just really want to thank you for bringing that forward, that we're all a part of a collective. My personal belief is that, what has come through me, which felt on many levels like a terrible pain I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Not that I have any enemies anymore, but anyway, is to raise the collective consciousness. And I think that the principles helps me understand that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. I love that. It's, you know, we all are going to see and experience things at so many different levels of perspective. So for sure, because we have a mind and a brain, it's going to look like everything in the world is about me and why, and like it should all make sense. And especially when we're suffering, our mind is going to go into overdrive with that perspective. And that might still show up at times for all of us. But I love what you're saying, what you're seeing, Pamela, like where you're a little more zoomed out most days, most moments, right? Where you're saying, hey, yes, there's a whole why me story over here and not fair and all this. But then there's also at the exact same time, there's so many different alternate realities, all different ways of seeing the same thing. And most of them are really, really beautiful as we zoom out more. Love that. Thanks for sharing that.
Love that too. I love the fact that when we step back, take that step back. That's beautiful. Thanks, Pam. I have Sharon, please. Hello. You're on mute. There you
Hi.
go.
There we go. Hi, Sharon.
Thank you so much, Amy, for being here. I've loved listening to you and in general, and then today. And I'm just really, I have to say, I'm really grateful for people sharing their experiences here in such a beautiful way and what they're seeing. It's been really beautiful being with you guys all. I just wanted to share that this idea of diagnoses and people have touched on it, and medication and everything. I was very depressed a long time ago before I came in touch with this understanding, and I had been on medication, which was really helpful. And then when I saw this understanding, I was settled enough, I think partly because of that medication, that I was able to really, really hear what was being shared. And I think the not personal part of it was really impactful for me. I think when I first got a diagnosis I was diagnosed with PTSD multiple times and anxiety and depression. I think in retrospect, all that happened was it was a relief at first because it took a lot of thinking off my mind about what's wrong with me. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, now I have a name. And so my thinking settled, right? But then I started to gather a whole new set of thinking about having this diagnosis, right? And when I came into the principles and started to see that I had plenty of moments where I wasn't thinking about myself at all. I was just present in the world. And when I started to tap into that understanding that it wasn't me and that I am that pure health, that thinking started to settle. And it was very funny because about 6 months later, I was in a group of people sharing like we are today, and people mentioned medication. And and we were going around in a circle at that point. We were actually in a room, like we're actually human beings in a room.
And remember when we did that?
And when it got to me, I just said, I can't believe this. I forgot I was depressed. I forgot I was on medication. I have no idea when the last time I took it was. I have no idea where the bottle is. I never made a conscious decision. I think I was just engaged in life again in a moment-to-moment way, sometimes sad, sometimes happy, sometimes feeling horrible and frightened, sometimes really present. And I just think I got swept up in being alive. And fast forward, anyway, so it was such an amazing thing for me to realize that I could actually heal like the way I'd heal from a cut and forget it existed. That the mind could do that the way a wound could happen, you know, when somebody's like, how's your back? And you're like, oh, that was, I forgot about that, right? Something that had been such a big deal in my life. And then fast forward a decade, a very, very, very difficult, prolonged time. And I realized that I couldn't hear again. I couldn't hear the wisdom. I was so deep in it. And it made sense to me to get on medication. And I got it. And I was deep in the principles at this point. And I said that out loud to people because I was afraid people would judge it and everything else. But my wisdom directed me there. And I got medication. And a few months later, I was able to hear again. It was almost like I just needed a crutch. But what I learned for myself was kind of like getting a cast on a brake. The cast is really helpful and useful, but the healing happens inside. The cast isn't what heals the brake. the healing is built in. It just kind of creates the conditions and immobilizes it. And I was able to come off again. So I just feel like I have this very loving, friendly relationship with medication and not being on medication, you know, and with the fact that we can go in and out, and that it's just a journey. So anyway, I just thought I would share that if it speaks to anybody and what people are sharing here. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. That's lovely.
I love that about the cast just kind of holds it in place. That's not what does the healing. The healing comes from within always. And yeah, it's beautiful.
It's like the Band-Aid, you know. Band-Aid covers the wound while it's healing, but the healing is coming from the inside out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Felicity, lovely to have you. Welcome.
Hi, Amy. Hi, Kelly. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about your thoughts about depression or other sort of mental illnesses, sort of pass on or learned through families, that patterns that are repeated in a family. Like my family, I have a large family, sisters, brothers, and my parents sort of lived through the Spanish Civil War and lived on a sort of very sort of, I was born post, you know, the Civil War, so in a very depressive. And I think my whole family, including my father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, suffer from different levels of depression, although sort of everybody functioning with very low depressive states. And you know, and I'm just wondering whether that depression is something that you can learn, that you can sort of learn from your environment, or your parents or your caregivers, and kind of, because that is my experience of it. Although I don't feel depressed now, and thank you to these learnings from this understanding. I think you know, I can't even believe how far I've gone within, you know, a period of 4 or 5 years, that I don't even think about depression anymore. But I have experienced depression my whole life, and I have seen sort of my whole family in depressive states. And I was talking to my sister the other day, and she was saying she's more within this sort of the medical field, and she was saying, oh no, we all have this genetic predisposition to depression. And I was saying, no, I think we just learn to be depressed from our, and I wonder what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think we can absolutely learn it. I think on some level, it's really always learned, even if there's a predisposition for it. Again, what that just means is some experience floats through, but we learn to identify with it. We learn to call it ours and to fight it and to, you know, get wrapped up in it. So on some level, I think it's always sort of learned, just because we identify so much with our experience. But yeah, for sure. And I think it doesn't matter really, like, you know, like you'll never probably know the answer to that question. It's partly learned, it's partly genetic. If it were 100% one or the other, I don't think it really matters. What matters is us kind of seeing, okay, here's what's showing up right now. And here's what I can see about it. Here's who I know I am beyond what's showing up. So I just love that about this too. Like, that's the beauty in it, is we don't even have to know. We might be curious about the roots, but we don't even have to know that. I for sure learned to worry. Like, we learn worry, we learn depression, we learn anxiety, I think, no question. And then we sort of forget we learned it, because it just feels so much like who we are.
I mean, for me, it's just now looking back where I don't experience depression. I can see what it is. I I understand the states, and the days that they have very low states, but I understand that is part of sort of my kind of human experience kind of thing. But I sort of see, when I sort of talk to my sisters or talk to my brothers, I see that they're still there. They're still so caught up in there. And yeah.
You know, the more you can be in your health around them, the more they get to kind of feel that. Like you can, I think there's this tendency sometimes to match the people we're with and to fall back into it because it's what you know as a family and all that. But the more you own your health and you see their health, they might not be feeling it, but you can know what's there beyond this weather that they're caught up in. People, you know, without ever even having to talk about it, sometimes people just feel that. And we usually say like, oh, I just like to be around this person. I just feel better when I'm around Felicity, or like, you know, I mean, so it doesn't even have to be a conversation or anything we can teach or articulate, but just the feeling will go a long way.
That was that place, Felicity, where I was sharing about the feeling that your ripple of wellness, your mental wellness and your wisdom coming through you, just sitting and being in a state of that, affects everybody you're around.
Yeah.
And I had a thought that came in that was an insight that I had earlier on, maybe my second year in the principles, and that was, people are not their behavior. Behavior is behavior. The person, like Amy was saying, is within. They're still there, fully whole and complete and beautiful. Their behavior might be one thing, but it's not who they are.
Thank you.
We do have a little bit of time left before Amy. We've taken her whole morning, her whole afternoon. So does anybody have anything they'd like to ask before we go? I'm going to open up the floor here to all of you who are with us. Even just an insight or an understanding, a question, whatever comes to mind.
I'll share.
Barbara, yeah.
Hi. Amy, great to meet you and have you on. So many insights. For me, I think like a lot of people have experienced it off and on. And I think a lot of the times, you know, what we witness as children, we observe as to be in our reality, and we repeat these patterns that we grow up in. And sometimes I wonder, because my daughter, she's 20 now, and it's like every time she gets on her feet and seems to be doing well, something happens, right? So one minute, well, you say 6 years ago, one minute she was just, you know, straight A student, doing fine, happy on the outside, but obviously very, very troubled on the inside, where she attempted suicide a couple of times. And that was just like, oh my God. So we you know, spent a lot of time getting her the traditional help, to the point of now that she's off meds and she's more on her feet right now. But what I'm finding is, you know, there's always something that pops up. Like last week, she got dizzy at physio and she passed out and went to the hospital. This morning she gets to work, she messages me and goes, I don't know if I can drive home because I'm getting lightheaded. So she's like manifesting all this stuff within her. Yet with me learning the 3 principles, and it really only, I think, Kelly, what, 6 months maybe into me understanding 3P and all that comes with it. You know, I see this in her, and for me, I find myself shifting and doing so much better in the stories that I'm telling myself about the situation that I'm placing myself in. And quite often, because it's new, and I'm like, okay, don't tell the story in your head about what's going on. It's, you know, it is what it is, and you'll focus and deal on it. And ask the right questions, and maybe it will ripple off into her where she'll see what's happening and go, oh, okay. You know, like a little kid that falls down, and if you rush to it, you know, oh, are you okay? It's going to cry and make a big fuss, and it programs that way, versus, oh, nobody's really reacting to what's going on, so maybe it's okay.
Yeah.
Right. But right now it's sort of a struggle for me. I'm like, my feelings as a mother, knowing her history and all these things that, you know, sometimes I can't help but go down that dark, into that dark place of like, well, what the hell's going on? You know, why is this happening? And then what can I do? And of course, that Kelly knows I love to control and I like to know things. Do you have any suggestions on how can I be in that place with her, for her, yet not drive myself crazy?
Well, I think you're doing it by continuing to just explore this. And like, as your, again, I'll just use this word, as your understanding, your grounding deepens in this, you come to just know more and more all the time. Like you said, there's that, like that sense of, oh, the kid fell and skinned their knee, but they're okay. And you say, you okay? All right, you're fine, you know, rather than rushing over. That's just your deepening in this. And also, and you're doing it. It sounds like you've come a long way in 6 months, and this is just the beginning, Barbara. Trust me, that's the beauty in this, right? Like you just have that crack going. It's only going to get better, and you're going to see more.
Yeah.
And also cut yourself some slack, because I see this least of all with my kids. So like you're up against, you know, you're kind of holding yourself to the highest standard there is, but you see what's going on. Even when we don't see it with our children as easily as we see it with others, we know, oh, that's just because I have a little more scared thinking when it comes to my kids, but it doesn't make this any less true. So she's given you these opportunities for you to keep deepening and what you know to be true. She's learning every time. And I think what you said is great, to be there, to care, but to know she's okay and give her that space. And then she gets to see, oh, wow, mom's not so worried about me. Maybe I am okay. You know? So I think it's all happening. It'll just keep happening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Amy, I'd love you to share before we go the understanding about what you have to offer, your website, things that are coming up for some of the people that are in the room that maybe don't know what's available to them with you and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So my website is dramyjohnson.com, and there's a lot of stuff there. I do a podcast. I do a weekly Ask Amy video. So there's all kinds of free resources. The way I support people personally is through my little School of Big Change, which is a 6-week course that I run twice a year. And one is actually starting in 3 weeks on March 1st. So twice a year, I have that opportunity for people to go through this program where I walk you through this understanding. We do a lot of coaching, a lot of support, and it's a beautiful group like this. People learn from each other way more than they're learning from me, which is how it should be. So everyone's just really open and sharing. And so that's the main way to kind of work with me. But again, yeah, my website, there's all kinds of free resources as well.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'd just like everybody to turn on their mics and thank Amy for coming in your own personal way.
Thank you so much, Amy. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Amazing.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. You guys are a great group. I loved your questions and comments, and yeah, such a nice group.
Love listening to you.
Thank you.
You'll find the recording on Kelly Mabel Education on Facebook, and you'll see us back here in the room next week with another beautiful speaker that will be sharing the principles. So thank you all for coming, and Amy, thank you. Could you stay in the room for just a minute before we close?
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, everybody, have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.